Hi, I'm Brian Sunday, and welcome to Effective, Efficient, Affordable, and Accountable to You. I'm here with James Roberts. James is running for the school board here in town. Hi, James.
Hi, Brian. Good evening, everyone. My name is James Roberts.
So you attended Oxford University and you studied modern history there?
I did. Oxford has a peculiar course. It calls modern history everything after the fall of the Roman Empire. My own speciality was 16th and 17th centuries European history, but Oxford was a wonderful opportunity. It was, number one, a very beautiful place to spend 3 or 4 years of your life. And number two, it attracts an enormous range of different students, a huge diversity, people from different backgrounds, different countries, different educational experiences. And try to make head or sense of that and really fit in was a joy, quite frankly, a joy.
How did that shape your vision of the world?
It meant that the world was suddenly a lot bigger place than I had ever anticipated. I mean, I think this is true of school as a whole. It reminds you that the horizons out there are much, much broader than your immediate concerns. And it really begins to teach you that pretty much everything is within your grasp if you're willing to take a risk and willing to seize the opportunity as it arises.
If you think about that experience and your vision of the world, based upon your own educational experience, how does that relate to what you would do here in Winsted and maybe instilling that type of idea the students here?
I would answer that, I think, in two different ways, very different ways. Number one, my particular background, being a student of history, reminds us that every town has to reinvent itself every couple of 100 years, whether it be for demographic reasons, whether it be for economic reasons, whether it be for plague or disaster. Pretty much every town has had to reinvent itself. And so looking at a town like Winsted, which is clearly on the cusp of needing to reinvent itself, that is not something which I find especially alarming. It seems the natural life cycle of a town. More specifically in terms of what does it mean for what one might do here? I think one of the roles of the Board of Education is to remind people that education is not just about dollars and cents, although the dollars and cents are clearly important. Education on an individual level is about a life-changing experience. It's about offering individuals the opportunity to do something they had never dreamt possible and giving them the confidence to do it. The other side of the coin is it's something so fundamental to a community. Not only is it our biggest investment as a community, and for those grounds alone we have to be conscientious stewards of the tax dollars that we lavish upon it, it is also our most important service as a community. It is the most important driver of economic development in our community. But beyond even that, it is a measure, if you will, as to how functional or dysfunctional a community is. Because education is so expensive, and because it's so easy for those who don't benefit from it directly to say no, the ability of a town, or of any community quite frankly, to find a course, to find a way to support education and to resolve the arguments that must inevitably arise out of that, to invest more, to invest less, to change. A town's ability to do that is very much a measure of a town's ability to survive and sustain itself. And quite frankly, Winsted's recent past has been more of not doing that. It has been more of the education being a mirror of dysfunction. And I think it's time that we, on the educational side of things, in the municipal side of government, need to start focusing on how to remind the folks out there, be it existing parents, be it new people who want to move to town, be it investors, be it developers, be it employers, that we can use education to find a common ground and to put Winsted's best foot forward, quite frankly.
You talked about a town reinventing itself. When you decided to run for the school board, you must have seen some things happening in the educational system here that made you want to put your name on the dotted line and say, I want to be a part of something here in town. We need to reinvent our school district. What are a couple of the things that you saw going on here that you think we need to address straight away?
I have been very blunt in the last several years. I think our school district is dysfunctional. I think it is, quite frankly, off the reservation. We have a school board that has entirely lost sight of their job. Put very simply, their job is to manage the schools not on behalf of the teachers, not on behalf of the supervisors, not even on behalf of the children. Their job is to manage the schools on behalf of the community whose schools they are and which pays the bill. Their job is to tell the supervisor, the superintendent, what educational outcome they want and what money he has available to achieve that. Their job is to direct him to pursue those goals, to monitor him in their pursuit of those goals, and to hold him accountable, quite frankly, for whether he gets the job done and whether he gets the job done within the budget. And finally, and this is the most important thing of all, Their job is to come back to you, the town, and explain to you how much they spent, what did they spend it on, to what effect, so that you, the people, can have an informed discussion as to your educational priorities going forward.
You talked about the job of the school board, and all great points, but has the current school board actually been doing that job?
The current school board, I think, has entirely lost sight of that job. There is no financial accountability whatsoever. We have audits that are either undone or done terribly, terribly late. We have line item budgets that quite simply do not add up. The math doesn't work. We have a school board that has no interest in telling the town what did it spend its money on. We have a school board that believes it has the right to overturn the people's budget. We have a school board that believes that spending for spending's sake and secrecy for secrecy's sake should be the guiding principles of educational governance. And that's just not right. We have a school board that believes the relationship of town and gown is one in which every loss for the town must by definition be a gain for the schools. And that is just frankly absurd. I mean, as Ben Franklin said, we must all hang together, or most assuredly we will hang separately. I mean, we have a relationship between our schools and our town in which we will either lose together or win together. And for the last several years we've been losing, and it is time to start winning.
We're talking about doing a job here, the school board's job. When you're talking about doing a job, you have to look at the resume of a person before you put them in that particular spot. In your opinion, what's the qualifications of someone who what should those qualifications be for someone who's serving on the school board?
I'm going to be a little heretical here. I don't think the qualifications are particularly exotic, and they certainly don't require being an educator. Each of you in your daily lives do something very important at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month. You sit down with the bills and with a pile of cash, and you pay the bills, and you decide with what's left over, how much of what you want can you afford to have. You prioritize. You go through an act of self-denial and an act of prioritization, and that's what a responsible adult does every day of the week. I simply don't understand why something that comes so instinctively to us as individuals is not something that we expect our government to do also. It must prioritize. It cannot have everything. The fact that it may perceive that the educational needs of the community are infinite does not trump the fact that the financial resources are finite.
So we're talking about all of these great natural resources that the town has, including its people, a lot of great people here. When you're talking about the education and its schools, what's missing? What's missing that will help get us over that hump?
I think the desire to get over the hump is probably the single biggest thing. We are locked in a bureaucratic battle here, in which the schools believe that every time the town wins, then that must necessarily be a loss for the schools, and vice versa. If the schools win, that must be a loss for the town. This is a mindset that is just unproductive. It is not helpful in terms of moving the ball forward educationally, and it's certainly not helpful in terms of moving the ball forward from a community's perspective. We should be building upon our diversity and building upon our natural resources to get the children to understand what a town is all about. A town is about differing people coming together across lines of diversity and coming to a common theme, a common goal, if you like. If we all retreat into our little bunker, if we all retreat into our nice house in the country and lock the gate, there is no community. I mean, people are fond of saying that a town that is not passionately supportive of its schools is just a collection of addresses. It's a collection of zip codes. Those towns that are passionate in support of their schools and can find a way forward, a common way forward to express that support, those are real communities. And there's a difference between a community and a town and simply somewhere that's cheap to live. And for too many people, quite frankly, Winsted is just cheap to live.
When I pick up the paper, the thing that I know about Winsted schools is we have some budget problems here. That's what you see in the paper every day. Based upon your professional background, working in the world of banking and finance, what types of skills would you bring to the table if elected to help Winsted push through some of these financial problems and questions and issues it's facing in terms of its schools?
Again, I would answer that in two ways. I think there are two general approaches that anyone who's worked in the private sector knows intimately and which belong in the public sector. The first of those is that results matter. I was fortunate enough to be able to retire at the age of 36 because, frankly, I was well paid. And I was well paid not because I just showed up or not because I had good intentions or not because I failed. I was well paid because results mattered and I got results. Government is the only place in this country where you get paid more to fail. Government is the only place where you are encouraged to fail. And the attitude brought from business that results matter, I think, is a huge benefit to a board like the Board of Education. The second general approach, I would say, is that as careful as you are with your own money, you have to be doubly so with other people's money. When I first joined Goldman Sachs, the firm was privately owned. Essentially 120 rich guys owned the company. And if I was part of a transaction which lost them money, I could expect a goodly portion of those 120 rich guys to show up at my desk and engage in a very forceful conversation about why I thought it was within the terms of my employment for me to lose their money. Those were searing conversations, but they were also good conversations because they inculcated a very simple rule. Results matter. They matter more if you're dealing with somebody else's money. And both of those lessons clearly apply to something like the Board of Education. More specifically, to answer your question, though, I think it's questions. I think the board individually have to be asked to consider the ramifications of their actions. They have to be asked, what result are you trying to achieve? How much will that cost? And after the fact, they have to be asked, did it work? Would you do the same thing again? What lesson have you learnt? Because if you will not ask those questions, if you don't care how much it costs, if you don't care whether you got the right result, if you don't care if it went wrong, we'll never make a whole lot of progress here.
How important is accountability in terms of turning around the school system, getting residents on the same page with the school board and our overall goals?
Listen, accountability is the name of the game. I mean, again, I have been blunt in the past, and I will be blunt again. In my mind, the tenure of Blaise Salerno was the greatest calamity to strike our community since the flood. And I'm not necessarily talking about the flood of '55. I say that because he broke the bond of trust between the schools and the people of this town. And in a democratic system such as ours, there is no greater crime than for the government to seek to govern without consent. But the blame was not solely Blaise's. His actions were aided and abetted and encouraged by successive boards of education that quite simply willfully disregarded their job, and they must shoulder a good portion of the blame. But that's not the whole story either. We, the people of this town, allowed the superintendent, we allowed the Board of Education to go off the reservation. We did not attend their meetings. We did not ask the hard questions. We did not insist upon frank answers. And we did not demand that the press cover the situation fairly and honestly. We bear a good portion of the blame for that. And if we want to fix this situation, we have to fix it. You, the people, have to want the schools to work. You have to show up. You have to participate. I know everyone is busy, everyone is struggling to make ends meet, people are working 2 jobs, seeking a 3rd job. But if you want this to change, you have to be involved. Best case, come November, there may be 2 people on this board who have a view different from the majority. 2 people out of 9 makes for lousy math. The only way this changes is if you show up and you help us.
Talk to me about effectiveness in the context of schools and education.
Effectiveness, in my mind, is a very simple concept for schools. To be effective, you need to demonstrate and point to a track record of improvement in educational outcomes. That's consistently improving test scores, improving graduation rates, improving disciplinary outcomes. It's getting a greater degree of parental involvement. It's having a more beneficial impact on the community. Everyone knows what a good school system is. A good school system is one that attracts new residents, attracts new investors, attracts new employers, and doesn't repel them, as I think our current system does.
How about affordability?
It's always the question, isn't it? How much money is there really to go around? A school system that is affordable is one in which the costs today are known and the costs tomorrow are predictable. An affordable school system is one that is ready to commit to a pay-as-you-go approach, that isn't going to defer maintenance expenses off into the future when they become expensive capital expenses, that isn't going to promise extravagant reimbursement for the future and to ongoing budgets. An affordable school district is one that is able and willing to set forth on paper clearly and accurately what was spent on what to what effect. An affordable school district is one which the community is not willing simply to tolerate, to pay for because the law requires it. An affordable school system is one which the community is anxious to support because it is proud of it. And that, I think, is clearly what everyone should be striving for, and quite frankly is within our grasp.
Now, I know you've poured over the school budget quite a bit in preparation for your run for the Board of Education. You've looked at the numbers, you've taken a look at the system. Tell me a little bit about efficiency and what role that plays in what we have here in Winston.
There are enormous areas of inefficiency within our system. An efficient school system is one that is ruthless in its identification and elimination of duplication, the elimination of waste, the elimination of programs that do not work, and the elimination of programs that, quite frankly, detract from the core mission. We must close a school. We may end up closing 2 schools. We must look at the sheer breadth of the educational programs that we support. Maybe they're too broad. We must look at our staffing levels, and perhaps most fundamentally, we have to look at our compensation structures. The era in which every employee was guaranteed a job for life, guaranteed a gold-plated pension, guaranteed free health care for themselves and their family, that era has gone. It is long gone. We cannot afford it. No one can afford that.
Now, some of those points you just made there, not popular viewpoints, but how critical is it?
It's critical. At the end of the day, there are only so many dollars to go around, and it is our job as a school board, as any agent of government, to prioritize. We have to figure out what result do we want and how do we get there. You don't elect us to make popular decisions. You can do that easily as individuals. The purpose of government is to make decisions that individuals find hard. Laying off people is hard. Telling people they're not going to get as much money as they want is hard. Telling people that they have failed is hard. These are the things that you need a government to do, and we must do them, because if we don't, nothing will ever change.
Why don't you think some of these tough decisions, or why do you think some of these tough decisions have been, put off in the past? It seems like we're kind of kicking the can down the road a bit.
In part because it's easy. I mean, it's very easy to say, oh, we're not going to close a school this year because we need to do another study. We've been talking about closing a school for the last 3 years that I'm aware of, and have done numerous studies, and they've all been pretty clear. We need to close a school. It's also been pretty clear which school needs to be closed. It's Batchelor. Batchelor is the school that's been closed without reimbursement to the state. Batchelor is the school which has the greatest asbestos problem that will need to be remediated at great expense to both town and state. Pearson is our biggest school and ultimately may become our only school. But we have to close a building. And the reason we haven't done so is because it's just too easy to defer. There has been this mindset, which drives me just a little bit bonkers, that everything is for the children, and closing a building is one of those decisions that doesn't work for the children. Once again, the purpose of the Board of Education is to manage the schools for the community whose schools they are. To say that the children cannot go to Hinsdale because the urinals are too high is ridiculous. Hinsdale used to be an elementary school. It was an elementary school until the infamous Plan B of several years ago. It worked. It can work again.
Take a step back on a subject you mentioned earlier. Tell me a little bit about the relationship between a community school system and economic development, the ability of a town to actually bring in some people who are willing to invest and to set up shop here, to grow roots, to build businesses.
There are a number of relationships, all of which are extremely important. At its most basic, if you are building housing and want to bring families into a town, you need to know that there is a functional school district. If you are bringing any sort of investment into town, you need to know that the town's finances and its tax rates are going to be stable and predictable going forward. And if you have a school district that is gobbling ever larger amounts, that is not going to be the case. But I think there again is a more fundamental issue here, which is the success of a school district, its ability to engender trust amongst the people, the ability of the governing classes, for want of a better description, to drive a consensus around the schools is the core target that any investor wants to see. The investor wants to see that a town can take difficult decisions and work them out. He wants to know that a town is not going to implode just because XYZ problem has emerged, whether it be with respect to his development or with respect to something completely different. He just wants to know that the town has a mechanic for working things out. And the schools, again, because they're so expensive, because they're so emotional for so many people, is the easiest measure of whether town has that ability or not. And without that ability, no developer will come to town. No one is going to come to a town where he does not know where the tax rates are going. No one is going to come to a town that has the perception of a school board at war with the people. No one is going to come to a town that can't solve its problems, be they difficult problems or easy problems.
James, tell me this. Let's say you win a seat on the Board of Education. What are a couple of things that you could do straight away to change the way the board conducts business?
I personally would like to see the board conduct more business and do less of the what I call the ceremony. The business of the board is a serious thing. To the extent that we need to celebrate the achievement of our children, and indeed we should, that is something that should be done in the school with the principal. It does not belong at a commission meeting at 7 o'clock at night. We need to spend more time making decisions and less time talking about why we can't make decisions. We need to be far more pointed in our questions. In the last month, the school board both adopted a budget that had no line items and then adopted a line item budget in which the line items didn't add up. The reason it did that was because no one on the board asked the question, what are we doing here, people? No one said, how do we adopt a budget if we've never seen it, if it doesn't exist, if there are no line items? How do we adopt a budget if the line items don't add up? What does that mean? It means the budget is useless at that point. A budget is a core financial control document. It says what thou shalt spend on each item. If the items don't add up, there can't be any financial controls. And there can be no responsible government without financial controls.
Tell me this, you've been officially running for the school board for a couple of weeks now, and obviously you've been in the paper here and there talking about education-related issues. What would you like to say to folks out there that think, this James Roberts guy, he's anti-education?
I've been labeled anti-education. I've been labeled a hater. Nothing could be further from the truth. We are in the business of buying education. I personally benefit greatly from education, and I think our community would benefit greatly from an improvement in the atmosphere around our schools. But the fact of the matter is, it is not hateful to check the bill. When you walk into a store and look at a product on the shelf, you look at the product, you look at the description, you look at what it's supposed to do, and you look at the price. And you walk to the checkout, and if the product label said it cost $10 and it rings out at $12, you're going to complain. And if you take it home and it doesn't work, you're going to complain a little bit more. Now, some people in town, maybe the school board, are so rich that they don't need to look at the bill. Maybe they don't care that they bought a lemon. They're just going to go out and buy another lemon, because frankly, it's your money they're buying the lemons with. I am not like that. I am not so rich that I can afford not to look at the bill, that I can afford not to care if the product doesn't work. And I'm certainly not going to presume that you are sufficiently rich that you don't care. I am going to assume you care, that you care about the bill, and there is nothing hateful about that.
So in the early stages of your campaign, what are the key issues that you've identified, key issues that the Board of Education really needs to, get its head out of the sand and attack right away?
Well, again, I think number one issue is the Board of Education needs to be reminded of what its job is. It needs to actually start managing the schools as opposed to fighting with the town. Number two, I think we need to start building a consensus away from town government, away from the board, but just amongst the people of this town, that what they want is not so much better schools or less taxes, but they want to find a happy balance between better schools and less taxes. We need to start a discussion that says, what exactly are we looking for? And how can we turn what has been a very divisive situation into a positive situation? Simply setting the tone is half the battle here. And the Board of Selectmen, I think, have done an excellent job of trying to set the tone in terms of financial discipline, in terms of stop the secrecy, stop the games, tell us what's going on. And that's one half of the coin. But the other half of the coin is, let's develop a positive tone. And it's not just we want to spend more. Spending is not the answer. The positive tone has to be, we as a community need to find a way to support our schools, which means we need to work together and work with the schools and work with the town, and not simply put our hand out and ask for more.
You've talked about the need for the town, and particularly the school district, the Board of Education, to reinvent itself. What message would you like to send to parents out there who, that kind of talk makes them a little nervous? They just want to put their kid on the bus, to go to school every day, and they want their kid to get a good education. But they start hearing about some of this stuff that they read in the paper. Class sizes are going to balloon, or we need to, take take a fresh look at how we do business, all of this stuff, and it's a little frightening to them. What message would you like to tell them?
I would certainly like every parent to understand that in my view at least, education is all about reinvention. Education is about widening horizons, doing things differently, taking a look at questions from a different angle than one normally takes a look at them. Education is about taking what you did yesterday and doing it better today in the hope that you will do it even better tomorrow. Change, yes, change is uncomfortable. Change needs to be managed. Change needs to be communicated above all. But change itself is not or should not be a scary thing. Change is a good thing. And for any parent who says, gee, I don't know what this new educational direction is going to be, I would say you have to trust us a little bit. And if you don't like what we do, vote us out. I am very comfortable with the idea that if you believe I have not held true to my principles, or if you believe I have been ineffective, or if you believe I have made the situation worse, you will vote me out. And frankly, I would say you're not doing your job if you don't vote me out. But at the end of the day, if the parents can get involved, if the parents can begin to steer the community in a direction of where do they want to see things go, again, not in terms of how much more money do they want, but what is the end result that they want? What do they want their children to be able to do? How do they want their children to be able to tackle life's problems when they leave Winchester School at the age of 18? That's what we need the parents thinking about, not worrying about class size. No responsible Board of Education is going to balloon class sizes. No responsible Board of Education is going to intentionally shoot the school process in the head. They're just not going to do it. They may talk about it because that's a tool for getting more money. They may threaten to do it, but they're not, at the end of the day, going to pull the trigger. And so we should let them talk, and we should figure out what the direction is that we want to go in. And how do we want our children to be prepared for life? Because that is the mission. We are going to figure out how to get from A to B. Where A is where we are right now, chaos, and B is a situation in which we are producing well-rounded, balanced individuals capable and greedy to take on life. Because that is the goal.
How does that fiscal instability affect nuts and bolts items such as, books, pens, paper, programs?
Oh, listen, if you don't know how much money you've got, it's very difficult to go out and buy books and computers and software. It is very difficult to go out and hire the newest and the best. It is very difficult to attract people who want a long-term career to a school district if they're worried about layoffs, if they're worried about the direction that the school district is going in. Well, I don't know why, reading what I've read in the press, a young teacher anxious to embark upon a long career would think that Winsted is an obvious choice for them. I would like to believe it is an obvious choice. I would like to hope that we can make it an obvious choice. But that young person simply picking up the newspaper, reading about what's going on, I don't know why they would think Winsted would be an obvious choice. If the schools get their fiscal house in order, they will regain the trust of the people of this town who will provide more money to the schools. It is that simple. The reason we've had zero budgets is not only because times are tough, but because the people do not trust the school board. If you told me that the school board was telling me to take an umbrella because it's raining outside, I would put my swimming costume on. I mean, it is that simple. There is no trust. And if we can get the fiscal house in order, that trust can be built. If we can get the fiscal house in order, we can get more resources. We can get more teachers if we need more teachers, or we can get different teachers if we need different teachers.
Well, James, it was great talking to you tonight, and I wish you a lot of luck on the campaign. You certainly have great energy and some great ideas, and I think you'd be a great asset to the town.
Brian, thank you for your time this evening. I'm enjoying this process and looking very much forward to the opportunity to serve if the people so elect.
Good luck.
Thank you.